hosters, happy spooky season. We are so excited to be back with Get Spooky With Me, my favorite series where I invite you to get ready with me while I tell a spooky story to get in the mood for a date where we eat, drink, and keep it spooky. Today's episode is super exciting because we are going on our first ever haunted tour together. But before we get started, if you're pretty freaking spooky like me, I invite you to hit that subscribe button down below so that you don't miss out on any of the tricks, treats, and spooky things we're brewing up for you. Let's see what's brewing at Four Peaks. All right, so when we started this series and Haunted Ever After, you guys gave an overwhelming response that you wanted us to go on haunted tours and hunting for ghosts. So for this spooky season, we are delivering and we are going to Four Peaks Brewing Company, which happens to be the home of the pumpkin porter beer. You guys know we've been on a journey on discovering Arizona and all the spectacular places in it. And it turns out that the brewery that creates this beer actually has a very spooky history, and they host haunted tours every spooky season. So today we're going on one of those. And if you guys saw my birthday celebration where we went to their opening, we actually snagged one of these cool koozies. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay, and I don't know why I have a hard time pronouncing that, and it's pretty cool because it comes with an actual like bottle opener. So I'm feeling really nervous today, and I figured why not smooth the, what is it called? I'm losing my words. I'm so nervous.
Wet your whistle.
Let me wet my whistle. That is such a terrible term.
You never heard that before? Master of ceremonies here, guys. It's so good, right?
Yes. Calm my nerves is the phrase I was looking for. Calm my nerves because I'm very nervous. It's the first time I've ever gone on like an actual haunted tour. I've always gone on like haunts. I love going on like haunts that are fictional.
It's a ghost tour, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I've never been on a ghost tour either.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, it's gonna be very spooky. So I'm gonna put a little sweater weather on this bad boy right here. I'm not going into too much detail because I'm sure we're going to be tasting all of their fall beers when we go later tonight. But let me just tell you guys, this is like, oh yeah, it's like having a pumpkin spice in the morning, but like getting ready for a date. Perfect mood. All right. So hopefully that helps me get a little calm. So as I mentioned, Four Peaks Brewery is, I don't think I mentioned this actually. It's located in Tempe, Arizona, and it apparently turns out to be one of the most historical places in Arizona. The building it's located in was built in 1892. And it was originally the Tempe Creamery. It was intended to be an ice plant, but then it ended up being a place where a lot of dairy products were made. And then in 1907, it was acquired by Pacific Creamery. And at that point, it ended up becoming one of the largest employers in Arizona. If you can imagine that, at that time, it was 50 employees, was the largest place of employment. So in 1927, it was bought by Borden Milk, and that's when it got its Spanish Revival architecture remodel. That's a mouthful. And then 26 years later, in 1953, it suddenly shut down, and to this day, nobody knows why.
So you finally decided to go with a notebook?
Yes. I think I'm like so caught up on everything being perfect sometimes that it slows us down and I can't get content out fast enough because I need to take time to memorize things. So I am trying to show you guys that if you're out to create something, don't get hung up on perfection. Just create it because I know you guys are going to enjoy this anyway, right? Leave a like and a comment down below if you love the spooky stories. All right, so that brings us to 1995 when Four Peaks Brewing Company was opened by the founders. They wanted to create a brewery and a restaurant inside of a creepy building, and this was the perfect place for that. So creepy things have been happening since the very first day that they moved into this building.
What are you putting on your eyelids right now?
Primer, so that the eyeshadow is more vibrant.
Oh, okay.
And then before we move forward, I didn't get a chance to say this because I got so excited about jumping into the story. I'm creating a fall look for you guys today because I've been having an orange moment I've been talking about, and it's like the first real spooky season. Get spooky with me, and I wanted to do like a very pumpkin themed fall vibes look to match the pumpkin porter.
I noticed that there's a Four Peaks logo at the bottom of the koozie. So when you drink,
oh really?
Yeah,
it's everywhere. Love the branding.
It's pretty cool.
Back here too. Yeah, this is pretty awesome. I really love that it's like a sweater on the beer.
I like those during the winter because sometimes if when you're going out and you're outside and you're having a drink, if you like go to a bar or whatever, it's cold.
Yeah.
But when you have one of those, like you're able to drink in comfort and not freeze your hand.
Yeah, that's true. A beer in the winter just hits different too, especially one like this one.
Yeah.
All right. So, are you ready for the scary parts?
Yes.
Okay, so since day one, they started hearing strange noises, echoes, and ghost encounters. And the very first day that they were going to do like their first brew, I don't know like the proper terminology for like brewing and beer. I mean, I can't even pronounce koozie without asking, right?
Yeah.
But the very first day that they were going to brew, they realized that the place where they had stored their grain, which was supposed to be like in a very temperature controlled room, safe from rodents and anything, which is where they stored it. They opened the door to that room and guess what there was?
Dead body.
No, tons of rodents though. Like all the grain was wasted. They couldn't use any of it.
Yeah.
And they had gone like through extra measures to make sure that that room was secured. So that was day one. So that was like their first warning that they were not welcome there. And since that day, they have heard like very strange noises. Tools will like be moved around the brewery, like if they leave them somewhere. And the craziest part is they hear noises like if people are actually working in there. Like there will be times when actual patrons of the restaurant will tell the waiters like late at night, like any time of the day really, they'll be like, hey, we heard some noises back there. Like, you guys really have people working at these hours? And they'd be like, no, we hear them too. Like, we can't do anything about it. They're just our little friendly ghosts around here. So another crazy thing that was happening though is they were hearing actual banging noises coming from inside the fermentation tanks. So they did everything they could to like actually figure out why there was a noise like that. They checked everything from, I gotta reference my notes on this one because I don't know the terminology. They checked the tank, the boil kettle, and the hop back, and there was no probable reason why those noises would have been happening. Like, they truly investigated everything because everything down to even like the pressure gauges were being switched, which was obviously very problematic.
I would assume that when it's fermenting all the gases being made, it would make noises unless the tanks were empty and making noise, then that's different.
Well, I don't really know like the full details, but I know whatever the noise was, it wasn't supposed to be happening at that time.
That is pretty creepy though.
Yeah, and I think they still hear those noises to this day. So then the very first, like, actually creepy thing happened. One day, one of the founders, Andy Ingram, was working on installing, like, the floor to one of the rooms. And in that floor is apparently where the, like, largest blade mixer was for the creamery. Like, I'm talking a huge one that, like, probably filled up the whole room.
Right.
And he was working, and some man walked in and started talking to him. And he didn't think anything weird of it because, like, at that time, the building was super historical, and people would always just, like, stop by because they wanted to see, like, this historical building, see what people were doing in it now that it had movement in it for the first time in a very long time. And so this man started talking to Andy, and they were having a conversation, and then out of nowhere, the man told Andy, I almost died over there. And Andy was like, oh, what do you mean? And so he started telling him, like, yeah, I used to work at the creamery, and one day I was at the bottom of this big blade mixer. I was cleaning out one of the, like, batches, and somebody turned on the blade mixer, and I had to, like, hide at the bottom of it in order to like not get sliced pretty much. And he was yelling for hours until somebody finally turned it off. And he was convinced that somebody was trying to kill him because like, how did it get turned on? And so Andy looked away for a second and he turned back and the man was gone. And he didn't think anything of it at the time. But then a few weeks later, one of the other founders, Jim, stopped by and was like, oh, look at this cool news article I found that was like 30 years old. And guess who was on the cover?
The guy from the blade that got stuck?
Yeah, the guy that Andy had been talking to. So he read the article, and it turns out that that guy was actually considered the new manager of... Actually, correction. So it turns out that the article was actually from the early 30s, and it was talking about how the creamery had a new manager, and his name was Victor Vogel. And when Andy looked at the picture, it was the man he had been talking to.
Oh.
And so they did some investigating, and it turned out that Victor Vogel, who was manager, died in 1974, and Andy met him in 1995.
Oh, that's crazy.
And that was just the beginning. Several people have gone on to see Victor Vogel. They've had different encounters with him. The bartenders, the staff, the patrons, like everyone has seen some variation that they believe to be Victor. And what I find interesting about this is that he didn't actually pass away at the creamery. And so they think that there's a chance that the reason he's there is kind of like unfinished business, because they think he's out trying to figure out who was trying to kill him that night. Because they later met up with his family, and they told them that story was basically word for word what had happened. And so their theory is that he just was really hung up on trying to figure out who was trying to kill him that night. And so that might be why he haunts the brewery, trying to find out who was trying to kill him. But I have another theory. I don't know. I might have talked about this on the podcast. I can't remember anymore. But my grandmother used to be a cook her entire life. She was the best cook ever. And when she was in her final days, she started kind of like doing the motions of like what she used to do when she was cooking in the kitchen, like especially like taking the orders and like rolling enchiladas. Like in her final days, she really like reverted back to what she did her entire life. And so part of me also wonders if like maybe it's not unfinished business. Like maybe that's just where he spent so much of his life that like it feels like home to him, because he's never done anything to actually try hurting people. Mm-hmm. He's just a presence there that everyone is very aware of.
But at that, aren't ghosts supposed to be sticking around for unfinished business, or are the what are the rules with that?
I mean, are there official rules?
I don't know.
I don't know, but I would think that there are situations where people can't move on for different reasons.
That's true. Can't move on from my NFL team, even though they're terrible.
That's what it's relatable for you?
Yeah, I get that.
So, again, people continue to see Victor several times to this day. And then a few weeks after they had discovered this, like, article and seen that it was potentially a ghost, Jim, who was the one who brought the newspaper article in, was at the bar. Excuse me, the beer. Speaking of. So he was at the bar, and then this lady showed up, and she started talking about how she was a medium, and he didn't tell her anything because it was one of those situations where he was like, well, I'm not going to tell her anything because if I tell her, then she's going to like feed off of that. So he was just very coy about it. And he was like, oh, would you like to take a tour of the brewery? Like, look around. And she was like, sure, I'll take a tour. And we're going to leave you guys in suspense because it's time for my wing liner. And you know how that goes. I cannot talk while we do that yet. So let's see if I get it right this time. And we'll jump right back into the story of the medium.
Okay, I'm watching her. And she looks very concentrated. But I'm trying to like be super quiet. Hold on.
Can you bring me what?
Why
were you being whispery, you creepy?
I was talking while you're doing that. What?
On that?
Mm-hmm.
It was creeping me out because I was hearing you whisper and I was like, who is he talking to?
Oh.
Is he talking to Bruce over there?
No, I was talking to me. You know, when you were telling me that story about the Mr. What's his name? Vogel?
Mm-hmm.
I thought you were going to tell me that he was killed in that machine.
Uh-huh.
And then his, like, ghost was still there.
Yeah,
like,
that's...
Like, walking around thinking that he survived.
Oh, that would be really sad.
That would have been a bummer.
Well, I don't know if he knows that he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Because he says, I almost died there.
Right.
So maybe, I don't know if his spirit is aware of the fact that it's a spirit or not.
Mm.
But I'm glad that you brought that up because, like, for me, it makes me think, like, if this story is made up, right?
Right.
Like, why would they go through the trouble of creating this story and then saying he didn't die there?
Right.
Like, to me, that's what kind of makes this more realistic, is, like, if they were doing it for marketing reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they would have just gone all the way and said, like, he told him he died there, or he later found out that he died there. But they just say he tells this story about how he almost died there.
Right.
And in true spooky form, we're using the Bad and Brujalash's Ghost for the first time. I've been wanting to open it for so long, but I was scared it was going to, like, be disgusting because it's white. But it's not too bad. It's pretty cute. And I actually did not intentionally start my eyes first. I just got excited, but I'm working with it. And I'm actually really happy with how my eyes turned out.
Me too.
I kind of tested this look the other day and Rudy kept saying that I looked really pretty. And then I told him, I think I know why you're really digging this look, because it was actually really similar to my wedding look.
That's right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And even down to the detail of my lips, which you'll be seeing shortly. This whole look for my wedding was inspired by this lip right here, and it is called Pumpkin. Like, I think this was the first detail of my wedding I had decided, because I was looking at makeup and I found that pumpkin lip, and I was like, that's gonna be the lip color for my wedding. It's named Pumpkin for a reason, and from there on out, like, everything revolved around this stupid lip color of pumpkin. It decided, like, our wedding colors, my entire wedding look. It just really spiraled. All right, so are we ready to hear what happened with the medium?
I'm ready.
Okay, so perfect timing with the ghost. So they're going through the brewery and everything's fine, and then they get to a certain room, and she finally says, I cannot continue. Like, I sense an overwhelming number of presences in here. I need to go. And she, like, rushed. She booked it out of there. She grabbed her stuff, paid her tab, and left. But before she left, she told them that one of those presences was not human. It was feline. Did you think it was going to be creepier?
Yeah, a little bit.
I did too. Sorry. It's not, I mean, it's very sad that it was a cat, but I really wanted to build that up.
She doesn't, because she doesn't like cats or what?
No, she was just saying that I don't know if it was a scary thing that it was.
Maybe she's allergic to cats?
No, I don't think that's the reason she left. But I'm just saying the whole, like, one was not human.
Oh, okay.
Did I get you? Did you think something creepier was in there? Because I did. Okay, so apparently they did some digging and then they found out that there was an accident during the I don't really remember in what time frame, but during the time of the creamery, there was an accident where an engineer was working on fixing, like, a light beam that had come loose during, like, a storm. And when he was working on it, it fell down and shattered, and nobody was hurt, but there was a stray cat that ended up passing away that was under there when it happened. And ever since then, they have always seen, like, stray cats around the building, but there's one that they've always been able to capture. But there's always been one in particular that is a black cat that no matter how many times they try to catch it, they've never been able to. And so, although this started out as a joke for me, telling you, like, it was feline, it's actually pretty sad because you never really think about, like, what happens to animals when they pass away. And I don't want to get into it because this will turn into me crying about my dogs one day, but...
Yeah, we're going to have to redo your makeup.
Yeah, we're going to have to start over from scratch, but I don't know, it was just interesting because you never hear stories about animals. It's always about humans or demons or something, and obviously the cat's not evil. He's not doing anything. He's just lurking. But I thought that was interesting. And it makes me think, like, are there spirits of animals?
Well, I remember a couple of years ago, the Pope said that animals do go to heaven.
Really?
Yeah.
Was that, like, a big headline?
I don't know if it was big, but I remember him saying that. So they might have souls, I guess.
If anyone is going to go to heaven, it's going to be animals. Because
it's true. All dogs go to heaven.
Yes.
You know what's crazy though? The area that this whole place is at, like it's part of an area of Tempe where it's a lot older. That it's kind of been like one of the first places ever built in this area, and then it just kept on developing. So I could see how there'd be some type of paranormal activity in that building because it's been around there for so long. Yeah,
and it's crazy, like throughout the time where it was like abandoned for like between Borden and Four Peaks acquiring it, I do think there were like several businesses that tried making it happen that would fail. Like I think at one point it might have been like some kind of bike company or shop.
Right.
And then I know for sure, this is a fun fact, at one point it was actually a record label studio.
Oh, wow.
And really fun history stuff there. Bands like the Gin Blossoms, Stevie Nicks, like very historical Phoenix or Arizona artists recorded there at some point.
Oh, that's cool.
And I hear that there's still like a studio you can see.
Oh, okay.
At Four Peaks through like certain tours, or if you ask, so maybe one day they'll invite us back to
that'd be really cool
to go see that. I think that would be really cool.
So when I first moved to Arizona, Four Peaks Brewery was like one of the first places I went to kind of check out because I was trying to figure out like the city, and I just went to different places.
How did you hear about it?
Well, I made a friend locally, still friends with him, Matt, and he told me about it, and we went. And it was like the first time I'd been to breweries before, but not like a brewery where it was brewery and bar.
Yeah.
So it was cool, seeing the bar and like the tanks where they make the beer. The same place, so that was really cool, and it's just really big. It's a massive place.
It is massive, and I think so. For me, like I never went until 5 years into living here. I don't know why, but I heard about it so much, and then when we finally went recently, I was kind of taken aback because like you hear so much about it, and then when you drive up to it, it's this like super random on like a random road. And then the parking is like insane because it's like along the street and then like there's some in the back alley, but it's like very rare that you'll actually find parking there.
Right.
And so I didn't really like when we first went, I was just like, if this place is so popular, like why haven't they like kind of like renovated or like made a real parking space? And then when you hear the history of it, you're like, because that's part of its charm. Well, like that's really part of like its history. Like they've really kept the building like as, what is it called? Like the
authentic?
Original building as like close to possible without like changing it.
Well, I mean, it's a historical building. Like if you think about it, back in the day, it was like an industrial area. Like, but of course it's smaller. But then like as it survived, apartments and ASU popped up next to it. So it just was still like an industrial like building. Yeah. And then stuff started changing around it. So I think that originally it wasn't made for like of course, it wasn't made for a bar. So.
Yeah, it was meant to be like a factory kind of.
So they weren't gonna have like parking structures for that, you know.
Yeah, no, and I get that now, but I guess like for me, when my first impression was like, I wonder why they haven't invested in all of this. And now I know, like, it's not that they haven't invested. It's that they've really tried to, like, preserve. That's the word I was looking for. They've tried really hard to preserve, like, the historical history behind it. And I think it's so cool. And part of that is, like, it's amazing how transparent they are about it. Like, they're not trying to hide, like, the crazy history behind it or, like, make it something it's not. Like, they're an open book, really. Right. Like, they host tours weekly, and you get to go, like, behind the scenes and into, like, the other working parts of the brewery, and they will point out, like, all of those historical elements and part of, like, the brick and that, like, Spanish revival architecture that I was talking about, which I think is just so cool. Like, part of, like, the entire charm of this place is actually that it was never... Like, it was built in, 1995, and they have preserved it that way as much as they possibly can, which makes it really cool and unique. Yeah,
because I think it's a brewery first, and it just happens to have a bar and a restaurant.
Yes.
'Cause, I mean, it's so big, you know, it's like, why not have a bar and a restaurant, too? Mm-hmm. But, you know, I think that's like, what kind of... makes it really cool.
Yeah,
is like their number one thing is it's a brewery first, and they just offer like their products. They just added to it.
And another thing that I really love is how genius their marketing is, because they have an actual shop, right? Where they like sell their beer, and then they have merchandise, and when they seat you, they take you through that shop first.
Yeah, that's pretty smart.
Which is like very strategic, because it's like enticing you to stop by the shop when you're done eating, because you know they know you're gonna enjoy the heck out of their meals and their beer.
Right.
Which is delicious. So how are you feeling about tonight? Like, now that you've heard the stories and we're going on our first real haunted tour.
I'm afraid of getting smashed by a light, like the cat, like in the dark. But I mean, I don't know. You never know what's going to happen in the dark. I'm assuming it's going to be all dark or not as bright. So I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited too.
Yeah, I think what makes it spooky for you is hearing like realistic stories behind what happened to these spirits, because you're a worrywart as far as like when we go under like huge structures or like construction. He's always like, what if it falls? It's gonna fall on us. Like, we're gonna be in some catastrophe. So I think like hearing like how these natural normal things happen to people and cats ended up leading to very unfortunate situations is kind of what spooks it up for you a little.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, what if I see those spirits? I don't want to see those spirits.
I'm worried that they're gonna, not worried, but I think like it's gonna be easy for people to hide and maybe want to scare you.
Oh,
That's what I would be afraid of. Is just being jump scared. Like, that's what I would do if I owned the brewery. I'd be like, I'm going to hide somebody and scare
because you're mean. I don't know. Now, I hadn't even thought of that element of it. I was just expecting, like, to go in and hear the history in the dark and the scary stories.
Right.
But you're thinking it's going to be, like, an actual haunt now where they, like, hide and scare you and stuff?
Maybe. That's what I would do. I wonder if we're going to get, like, little machines. Like, you know how you go to...
Oh, yeah. Like the little readers and stuff? Yeah. I don't know. For those of you who have gone on, like, ghost tours before, do they ever do stuff like that where they like place like jump scares and stuff for you, or is it just like the storytelling and like, let's see if we hear a spirit here today? I don't know. Like, we don't know what to expect. Like, neither of us has done this before, which I'm really nervous about. But let me slap on my pumpkin lips and I'll be right back. All right, so I'm back with my pumpkin lips. How do they look?
It looks good. Looks really good.
Do they look gorgeous?
They look gorgeous.
All right, so if you guys want to see my final look that adds all the fall together, you can check it out in next week's Haunted Ever After episode, where we are going on our first haunted tour at Four Peaks Brewing Company. How are you feeling?
I'm ready. I'm ready to jump into this spooky situation.
This spooky... Ooh, I I like that. Hashtag spooky situation. We have found ourselves in a spooky situation. Yeah, that I like it. We are coining that. Before we head over, I'm going to finish up this pumpkin porter. So gourd. So a lot of spooky things that can happen tonight. So I'm getting nervous again. But yeah, be sure to check it out. Let us know in the comments down below if you all have done haunted tours before or ghost tours. Has anything actually spooky happened to you, and has it followed you home? Like, that is my worst fear going on these adventures, is something spooky gonna follow me home, because I can't deal with that spooky situation. But in the meantime, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and notification bell down below so that you don't miss out when we release our first Haunted Ever After haunted tour next week. And we would greatly appreciate if you hit that like button down below if you thought this video was pretty freaking spooky. Until next time, I'm sending you ghouls and kisses. Bye!